The massive mechanical worm bursts through Haven Prime's outer wall, its segmented titanium body grinding through reinforced concrete like paper. 8-year-old Craig Walker watches from the command center viewport as the ancient machine, longer than a subway train, writhes against the colony's failing shields. 50 more of its kind tunnel through Proxima B's rust-colored soil, converging on humanity's last stronghold. Shield integrity at 18%, the AI announces as Craig's father Marcus works frantically at the defense controls. Around them, the remaining colonial staff coordinate the evacuation of 50,000 civilians deeper into Haven Prime's underground levels. The year is 2157, and humanity's first extrasolar colony faces extinction. In orbit, Captain Zara of the Denobulan rescue vessel observes the siege with growing concern. Her ship arrived minutes ago, responding to the colony's distress signal, only to find the mecha worms had established an impenetrable planetary defense grid. The xenobiologist recognizes the machine's design from her studies of precursor ruins in nearby systems, but never has she encountered any still functional. Craig slips away from the command center, his father's security credentials stored in a stolen data chip. The colony's engineering archives might hold answers. As another impact rocks the facility, he reaches a sealed terminal in the lower levels. The interface springs to life at his touch, ancient symbols scrolling across the screen. The truth reveals itself in fragments of code and schematics. The mecha worms were never weapons. They're terraforming machines, part of a vast network left behind by the long-extinct precursor civilization. The machines detected the human settlement as unauthorized interference and activated their defense protocols. A strange resonance fills Craig's mind as he studies the alien text. The symbols shift, becoming clear, almost familiar. Unknown to him, his neural patterns match rare precursor parameters, a 1 in a billion genetic fluke that allows him to interface with their technology. Above, Captain Zara receives urgent orders from the Denobulan High Council. Abandon the human colony immediately. The risk of engaging with precursor technology is deemed too high. As she wrestles with her conscience, Craig accidentally activates a dormant command console hidden beneath Haven Prime. The war between humanity and machines has reached its critical moment. In the command center, Marcus Walker diverts the last power reserves to the failing shields as more mecha worms breach the perimeter. The colony has hours left. In orbit, Captain Zara must choose between her duty and helping a child who might be humanity's last hope. And deep in Haven Prime's lower levels, Craig Walker begins to understand that he alone can communicate with the ancient machines threatening to destroy everything he knows. Captain Zara's fingers hovered over the ship's command interface. The orders from the Denobulan High Council blinked on her screen. Disengage immediately. She closed the message and opened a comm channel instead. Doctor Ross, meet me in the teleport bay. Bring your scanning equipment. She rose from her chair. Lieutenant Commander Trill, you have the bridge. Chief Security Officer Merck blocked her path. Captain, you're violating direct orders. Stand down, Merck. Zara stepped forward, but Merck reached for his neural stunner. Lieutenant Commander Trill moved with practiced efficiency. In one fluid motion, he disarmed Merck and activated security restraints. The captain gave you an order. Below in Haven Prime, Craig's head throbbed as alien symbols swirled across the screen. Each character pulsed in sync with his heartbeat, forming patterns that spoke directly to his consciousness. A hand touched his shoulder. I'm Dr. Ross. A tall man with silver-streaked hair crouched beside him, holding a device that hummed softly. Don't move while I scan you. Blue light washed over Craig's face. Dr. Ross studied the readings, his expression shifting from professional interest to barely concealed excitement. 89% correlation with precursor command frequencies. In 20 years of studying their artifacts, I've never seen anything above 40%. Marcus Walker's voice crackled through the facility's speakers. Security teams to Sector 7. Worm breach in progress. Dr. Ross helped Craig up as Captain Zara entered, her uniform marking her as non-human, slightly taller than average, with faint ridges along her temples. The boy's neural patterns are extraordinary, Ross explained. But each interaction with the interface causes minor damage to his neural pathways. A massive impact shook the facility. Marcus Walker's tactical display showed 3 mecha worms converging on Haven Prime's weakest point, but something about their attack pattern caught his attention. They're targeting specific points in our infrastructure, Marcus realized, overlaying the attack data with the colony's architectural plans. Look at this, they ignore sections built with different geometric patterns. Craig pointed to the screen where new symbols appeared. It's showing me something. A place. Underground. The Master Control Unit, Doctor. Ross confirmed, scanning the coordinates. 50 kilometers from here if we can reach it. My ship can create a safe corridor, Captain Zara interrupted. But we need to move now. On the bridge of the Denobulan vessel, the crew watched as their captain defied orders to abandon the human colony. Most stood with Trill, who maintained order while Merck sat confined to a holding cell. The team assembled quickly, Craig, Marcus, Dr. Ross, and Captain Zara. They boarded a ground transport as the Denobulan ship positioned itself overhead, extending its shield umbrella to protect their path. These readings are odd, Dr. Ross said, studying his scanner as they approached the precursor facility. Recent excavation activity, and this equipment. Marcus examined the abandoned tools near the facility's entrance. Centauri Mining Corporation. What were they doing here? Movement flickered in Craig's peripheral vision. Small, metallic forms skittered from Shadow's security drones left by the precursors, awakening after millennia of dormancy. Their spider-like legs carried weapon systems that hummed to life. Captain Zara drew her pulse pistol. Behind me, the facility entrance is 30 meters ahead. Dr. Ross checked his neural scanner again, glancing at Craig with concern. Remember, you only have a few attempts left before the neural damage becomes severe. We need to make them count. The security drones moved to surround them, their ancient weapons charging. Craig felt the familiar pressure building in his mind as precursor systems registered his presence. The real test of his connection to this alien technology was about to begin. The security drones advanced in perfect geometric patterns, their articulated legs clicking against metal floor panels. Craig's presence caused several units to pause mid-stride, their weapon systems powering down momentarily before reactivating. Mark-II Sentinels, Dr. Ross whispered, consulting his scanner. Basic security units, but still lethal. He pointed to distinctive markings along their chassis. These are originals, not replicas. Marcus studied the drones' movement patterns, noting how they redistributed themselves whenever Craig's neural interference affected a cluster. They're compensating for blind spots, but there's a delay. He pulled a power cell from his belt and modified its output frequency. Craig, stay close. Everyone else, match my movements exactly. Captain Zara kept her pulse pistol trained on the nearest drone. Multiple contacts ahead, the facility entrance is blocked. Through the shifting mass of mechanical limbs, a figure pounded against a shimmering energy barrier. Help, in here. Dr. Ross adjusted his scanner. Human life signs, one person. They advanced carefully, Marcus using the modified power cell to project a field that mimicked Craig's neural signature. The drones within its radius stuttered in their tracks, creating a narrow, safe corridor. James Foster, the trapped man, introduced himself as they approached. Centauri Mining Corporation, you have to shut this system down. Marcus's expression hardened. CMC. What were you doing here? Foster's explanation spilled out between panicked breaths. We found it months ago, precursor tech worth billions. Then our extraction attempts triggered something. The worms weren't supposed to. He choked back his words as Craig doubled over, gripping his head. Neural degradation accelerating, Dr. Ross reported, scanning Craig. The connection is damaging his frontal lobe faster than projected. Captain Zara touched her communicator. Bridge, scan for alternative entry points. Secondary access detected, Lieutenant Commander Trill responded. Maintenance tunnels bearing 47. Caution, designed for drone traffic. A low rumbling drew their attention. The wall panels vibrated as something approached through the surrounding rock. A mechanical serpent, smaller than the giants attacking Haven Prime but still larger than their transport vehicle, burst through the floor 20 meters away. Its sensory array swiveled toward them, collecting data. Scout worm, Dr. Ross identified, running diagnostics on everything in range. More scout worms emerged, forming a perimeter. Craig stumbled toward a panel that slid open at his touch, revealing a precursor maintenance terminal. Alien text scrolled across its surface. "They're not just terraforming machines," Craig said, his voice strained. "The worms, they were meant to evacuate civilians during a war." His hands moved across the interface. "They think we're enemy forces." Marcus modified another power cell. "The neural signature works on the scouts too. If we amplify it—" "No," Dr. Ross interrupted. "Maintaining that connection could cause permanent damage." Craig's fingers continued moving across the terminal. "I can control them, the small ones at least." A transmission cut through their deliberation. "Command center to Walker team. Multiple hull breaches. Security Chief Torres implementing your geometric protocols, but we're running out of compatible sections." 3 more primary units detected, Trill added from orbit, emerging from the southern hemisphere. The maintenance terminal displayed a warning in Poolsing precursor script. Deep within the facility, ancient systems hummed to life. "We need to decide now," Captain Zara stated. "Main entrance or maintenance tunnels." Craig swayed on his feet as blood trickled from his nose. The scout worms inched closer, their sensors probing. Behind the energy barrier, Foster pressed his hands against the field, his face pale with fear. The security drones regrouped, weapons charging, while the facility's deeper chambers activated one by one. Marcus steadied his son as Dr. Ross administered a stabilizing injection. The next few minutes would determine not just their survival, but the fate of every colonist in Haven Prime. The ancient machinery surrounding them waited for their choice, ready to execute protocols established millennia before humanity's first step into space. Maintenance tunnels, Marcus decided, supporting Craig's weight. "Those drones won't fit through the narrow passages." Captain Zara nodded, checking the schematic on her wrist display. "This way." Foster pressed against the barrier. "You can't leave me here. We'll return once we've stabilized the situation," Dr. Ross assured him, administering another injection to Craig. The boy's pallor improved slightly. They located the maintenance access panel 50 meters east. Craig's proximity triggered its release mechanism, revealing a cramped shaft barely tall enough for Captain Zara. Marcus helped Craig inside while the scout worms observed their movements, sensors tracking every step. "I see equipment ahead," Dr. Ross said, scanning the tunnel. "Mining gear, CMC logos." Marcus collected components from the abandoned equipment: power regulators, neural dampeners, signal boosters. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, assembling an improvised device. "This should help filter the neural feedback, like a surge protector for your brain." Craig's eyes widened as Marcus attached the modified scanner. The constant pressure in his mind eased slightly. 3 scout worms entered the tunnel behind them, their segments compressing to fit the confined space. "They're following my commands now," Craig reported. "But it feels strange. Like they're confused." The tunnel opened into a circular chamber filled with damaged data columns. Dr. Ross immediately connected his equipment to the least deteriorated unit. Ancient displays flickered to life, streams of information flooding his screen. "Remarkable," he breathed. The worm's base programming, it's all here. Emergency protocols, civilian evacuation parameters. He turned to Craig. Your neural pattern matches their safety override system. You register as a precursor child. A mechanical grinding echoed through the chamber. A panel slid aside, revealing a humanoid figure covered in corroded plates. Its photoreceptors focused on Craig. Precursor juvenile detected, it announced in halting speech. Unit 147 active. Protection protocols engaged. The android's movements were jerky, its servos whining with age. It approached Craig, scanning him repeatedly. System malfunction detected in primary units. Terraforming parameters corrupted. Mining activity, unauthorized access attempt registered. Captain Zara's communicator chimed. Captain, 3 denobulan warships approaching, Trill reported. ETA 6 hours. Orders to eliminate all evidence of precursor technology. The facility shuddered. Through the maintenance tunnel's sensor feeds, they watched 3 massive worms emerge from the planet's southern hemisphere. Their attack pattern displayed unprecedented coordination, striking Haven Prime's weakest points with surgical precision. Tours to Walker Team, the security chief's voice crackled. Power grid failing. The denobulan ships helping, but these new ones, they're different. Unit 147 indicated a sealed doorway ahead. Master Control Unit access. Neural interface required. Dr. Ross scanned Craig again, his expression grim. The neural damage is accelerating. Another direct interface could cause permanent brain trauma. Marcus examined Unit 147's exposed circuitry. Your processing core, could it filter Craig's connection? Buffer the feedback. Affirmative. Terminal shutdown required. Primary directive. Protect precursor juvenile. The android began disconnecting its core housing. Acceptable outcome. Through the tunnel sensors, they watched the mecha worms begin constructing massive crystalline structures around Haven Prime. The geometric patterns matched precursor containment protocols. They're building a cage, Dr. Ross realized. Once it's complete, the colony will be permanently sealed. Marcus removed Unit 147's processing core with delicate precision. The android's photoreceptors dimmed. Protect. Juvenile. Craig touched the inert machine's faceplate. Thank you. The security door loomed before them, its neural interface pulsing with deadly energy. Marcus integrated Unit 147's core into his makeshift amplifier, adding modifications from Foster's abandoned equipment. Every minute brought Haven Prime closer to either permanent imprisonment or destruction by the approaching denobulan warships. Craig stepped toward the interface, the modified amplifier humming against his temples. Marcus gripped his son's shoulder. Ready? The boy nodded, reaching for the pulsing interface panel. Above them, the containment grid continued its inexorable construction, while in orbit, the denobulan warships crossed the system's outer markers. The next few moments would determine everything. Craig's fingers hovered over the pulsing interface panel. Marcus made a final adjustment to the modified neural buffer, securing Unit 147's processing core. The android systems are stable, Marcus said, checking the readings. Its core should filter the worst of the neural feedback. Craig pressed his palm against the panel. Blue light rippled through the circuitry, spreading up his arm. His body tensed, but the expected wave of pain didn't come. Unit 147's core hummed softly, absorbing the dangerous feedback patterns. The massive security door split along invisible seams, revealing a spherical chamber that stretched hundreds of meters in every direction. At its center floated a crystalline structure shot through with organic matter tendrils of living tissue intertwined with quantum processors. The Master Control Unit, Dr. Ross breathed, scanning the hybrid computer. It's partially biological. The structure pulsed with internal light as it detected Craig's presence. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing archived data streams from countless preserved minds. Precursor juvenile detected, a chorus of synthesized voices announced. initiating emergency protocols. Through the facility's sensor feeds, they watched the Mecha worms freeze mid-attack, their segments locked into place, weapons powering down as they entered standby mode. James Foster slumped against the wall, his skin taking on a sickly gray tone. "You need to know the truth," he gasped. "CMC found more than just terraforming tech. There's a secondary command node. Military applications." He fumbled with his tablet, transferring access codes. "Our research facility. Coordinates enclosed." Dr. Ross's scanner chirped urgently. His eyes widened as he analyzed the master control unit's base programming. The containment grid, it's not a prison. The system thinks it's protecting Haven Prime from external threats. The chamber shuddered. Captain Zara's communicator crackled with static. "Multiple geological disturbances detected," Trill reported. "Seismic activity increasing exponentially." Denobulan warships have accelerated their approach new ETA 4 hours. Marcus studied the holographic displays, focusing on system architecture diagrams. "The secondary command node, we could use it to modify the base protocols, register human colonies as protected structures." He turned to Craig. "But you need to maintain neural contact while we upload the changes." The floor bucked beneath them. Security Chief Tor's voice cut through their comms. "Hull breaches in sectors 7 through 12. Evacuation procedures initiated, but the orbital defense grid is preventing launches. The containment grid construction is destabilizing the planet's crust," Dr. Ross reported, checking his readings. "We have minutes, not hours." Marcus located a maintenance tunnel access point. "The command node needs physical connection to implement changes. We'll have to transport it here." He gathered their remaining equipment. "Captain, take point. These tunnels won't stay stable for long." Captain Zara drew her pulse pistol, activating her wrist display's mapping function. "This way. The CMC facility is 800 meters east." Craig maintained his connection to the master control unit, using Unit 147's core to buffer the neural strain. The preserved precursor mind swirled around him, their archived thoughts flowing past his consciousness in alien patterns. The tunnel ahead groaned as tectonic plates shifted. A support beam crashed down, forcing them to crawl through the narrowing space. Dr. Ross's scanner tracked the spreading geological instability. "The colony's foundation is fracturing," he announced. 50,000 people in the lower levels and nowhere to go. They reached a junction where the tunnel split into 3 branches. Captain Zara consulted Foster's coordinates. The walls creaked ominously as another tremor passed through the facility. "The command node is down there," Marcus pointed to the eastern passage. "But these tunnels won't hold much longer." Craig stumbled, blood trickling from his nose despite Unit 147's protection. The master control unit's influence pulled at his mind, while above them the containment grid continued its construction. Each new segment increased the seismic instability, pushing Haven Prime closer to collapse. The tunnel ahead disappeared into darkness, its environmental systems failing. Captain Zara activated her tactical light, illuminating their path forward. They advanced carefully, racing against geological forces that threatened to bury them all beneath kilometers of rock. The passage ahead crumbled, forcing them to backtrack. Craig stumbled again, his legs buckling. Blood dripped steadily from his nose despite Unit 147's neural buffer. "His neural patterns are destabilizing," Dr. Ross announced, supporting Craig's weight. "The android's core is degrading faster than anticipated." Marcus checked the buffer's readings. The quantum matrix showed spreading decay patterns. They needed to pause, let Craig's mind recover, but the tremors intensified with each passing minute. A section of wall collapsed inward, revealing a hidden chamber. Captain Zara's tactical light illuminated rows of oval pods, their surfaces etched with familiar precursor script. "Neural rehabilitation chambers, Doctor." Ross breathed, scanning the nearest unit. "They're designed to treat mental trauma, still powered somehow. The facility lurched violently. Captain Zara's communicator crackled. "Tor's here. 3 lower levels gone. We're cramming 15,000 people into the remaining safe zones." The Denobulan ship's helping stabilize main supports, but static cut through her transmission as 4 massive shapes breached the ship's defensive screen. Marcus carried the command node, while Dr. Ross guided Craig between toppled equipment racks. Each step triggered fresh tremors, the containment grid's construction wreaking havoc with Haven Prime's tectonic plates. "Magnitude 7.8, Doctor," Ross reported, checking his readings. "The grid's energy discharge is destabilizing the entire continental plate." Lieutenant Commander Trill's voice cut through their comms. "Captain, intercepted Denobulan transmission. They're planning concentrated plasma bombardment of the facility." Dr. Ross's face paled as he analyzed the master control unit's data stream. "If they do that, they'll trigger the facility's final defense protocol. Every worm in the system will initiate emergency self-destruct. The combined detonation would tear Haven Prime apart." A weak signal pulsed through their sensors. James Foster's emergency beacon activated, its signature drawing 2 scout worms that immediately began tunneling toward its source. Foster's radiation-ravaged voice rasped through their comms. "CMC Research Base. Coordinates transmitting." Marcus tracked the worm's boring pattern. "They're cutting straight through to the command node's connection point. We can follow their tunnel instead of risking these maintenance shafts." He examined the nearest rehabilitation chamber, nodding its neural interface components. "We could adapt this to buffer Craig's connection, with Unit 147's core integrated." His hands moved quickly, salvaging parts from their damaged equipment. New contacts appeared on Captain Zara's tactical display, multiple signatures emerging from the scout worm's tunnel. Armed figures advanced through the passage, weapons trained on their position. "Corporate Tactical Team," Captain Zara warned, raising her pulse pistol. A tall man in CMC executive armor stepped forward. "Director Victor Kane, Operations Division, lower your weapons." Kane's eyes fixed on Craig. "The boy's neural signature is the key to everything. Our prototype interface can harness the entire worm network for military applications. Hand him over." The chamber buckled. Support beams groaned as another tremor rippled through the facility. The tunnel between their groups collapsed in a cascade of debris, but not before a falling beam struck the command node's housing. Marcus examined the damage. Primary processors intact, but the interface matrix is fried. We'd need components from their prototype to repair it. The modified rehabilitation chamber hummed to life, then emitted a high-pitched tone. Through the facility's sensors, they watched dozens of scout worms change course, converging on their position. Captain Zara activated her comm. "Dax, this is Captain Zara. The Denobulan fleet needs to hold position. We can tenacity this without destroying the facility." "Energy signatures are spiking," Commander Dax responded. "The facility is activating additional systems. Our calculations show core destabilization within hours if the power draw continues." The chamber's walls cracked as the first scout worms reached their level, mechanical segments grinding through reinforced barriers. The rehabilitation chamber's signal grew stronger, drawing more worms with each pulse. Marcus studied their rapidly deteriorating options. Attempt to reach Kane's team through the collapsed tunnel for the prototype components, or risk using their damaged equipment for Craig's neural connection. The decision point loomed as another worm breached the chamber's outer wall. Craig pressed his hand against the modified rehabilitation pod, its systems already integrating with Unit 147's failing core. "What's it going to be, Dad?" Craig asked, blood still trickling from his nose as the facility's tremors intensified around them. The wall behind them disintegrated as 2 more scout worms pushed through the facility's crumbling structure. Captain Zara took aim at the nearest breach point while Dr. Ross prepped emergency stabilizers. The next few seconds would determine their path forward. "Through the breach," Marcus commanded, pulling Craig away from the rehabilitation pod. "We need Kane's prototype components." A scout worm's segmented body crashed through the chamber wall. Captain Zara fired 3 rapid shots, the energy pulses impacting its sensory cluster. The massive machine recoiled, giving them precious seconds to escape through the tunnel. Marcus supported Craig as they navigated the unstable passage. The boy's eyes darted back and forth, tracking invisible movements. "I can feel them," Craig whispered, wiping blood from his upper lip. "The worms, their patterns are becoming clearer." Dr. Ross's scanner chirped. His neural activity is synchronizing with their base frequency. The repeated exposure to precursor tech has triggered some kind of adaptation. Craig stumbled, his eyes unfocused. "The grid, it's nearly complete, 78% when it finishes." He shuddered. "The air will change, humans won't survive." The tunnel branched ahead. Craig pointed left without hesitation. "Kane's team went this way. I can sense the worms following them." They emerged into a larger junction where 2 scout worm tunnels intersected. Kane's tactical team had taken defensive positions behind fallen support beams. The CMC executive's armor gleamed as he raised his hand. "Hold position," Kane ordered. "One more step and I trigger the imps. Every electronic system in this facility goes dark, including life support." The chamber shook violently. A support beam crashed down, striking Kane's equipment case. The prototype neural interface skittered across the floor, its housing cracked. Marcus lunged forward, snatching critical components before debris buried them. Kane's men opened fire, forcing the team behind a collapsed section of wall. "You don't understand what's at stake," Kane shouted over the weapon's fire. "CMC needs the boy's neural signature. With it, we can control the entire worm network." Captain Zara's communicator activated. "Captain, denobulan warships have altered course," Commander Dax reported. "They've detected CMC's hidden facility and are targeting both locations. New arrival time, 2 hours." Marcus examined the salvaged prototype parts under Dr. Ross's scanner. "These will work. We can repair the command node's interface matrix." The repairs revealed an additional display, a dual neural pattern requirement. Marcus's face fell as he studied the readout. "The system needs 2 synchronized minds, a failsafe against unauthorized access." Dr. Ross ran rapid neural pattern analyses, his eyes widening at the results. "Captain Zara, your denobulan brain structure. It shares a 42% compatibility rating with precursor patterns. The highest recorded in any non-human," Marcus added. "It might stabilize Craig's connection." Captain Zara's expression hardened. "The risks, permanent psychological damage to both participants," Dr. Ross answered. "But without the dual connection, we can't interface with the master control unit." A distant explosion rattled the chamber. Kane's voice carried across the debris field. "My men are activating the imps. You have minutes before this facility goes dark." Deep tremors shook the tunnel network. Through their comms, Security Chief Tor's voice was tight with tension. "Protocol Omega initiated. All colonists moving to Central Chamber. Our last fallback position." Craig grabbed Captain Zara's arm, his eyes intense. "The magma chambers beneath Haven Prime, they're destabilizing. I can feel it through the worm sensors." Captain Zara checked her tactical display. The denobulan ships approached from above while molten rock gathered below. She met Craig's gaze and nodded once. "We move now," she ordered. "Back to the master control unit. Kane's men can't reach the imps if the worms keep them pinned." Marcus gathered the repaired command node while Dr. Ross prepped neural monitoring equipment. They advanced through the tunnel network, Craig guiding them past unstable sections with his growing awareness of the worm's movements. The massive chamber housing the master control unit came into view. Its crystalline structure pulsed with internal light, organic tendrils writhing as the containment grid neared completion. Captain Zara and Craig approached the neural interface platform, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Initiating connection in 3, Marcus announced, activating the command node's repaired systems. 2. The chamber's lights flickered, the first EMP detonating in a distant section of the facility. They had seconds before the pulse wave reached them. Craig and Captain Zara pressed their hands against the interface panels as Marcus completed the activation sequence. Neural energy surged through the connection points. Craig gasped as alien patterns flooded his consciousness. Captain Zara's face contorted in pain as her mind struggled to stabilize the overwhelming flow of precursor data. The master control unit's light intensified, recognizing the dual neural patterns. Through their shared connection, Craig and Captain Zara began accessing its base protocols while Marcus raced to upload the modified commands. The first lines of code transferred as darkness crept toward the chamber, marking the EMP wave's approach. The EMP wave surged through the facility's systems, plunging section after section into darkness. Marcus's fingers flew across the command node's interface, establishing a hardline connection moments before the pulse could reach their position. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the chamber as backup power engaged. Craig's body convulsed against the neural interface panel. Blood streamed from both nostrils as his consciousness merged with the precursor systems. Captain Zara's eyes sharp, veins standing out on her temples as she fought to stabilize the connection. Neural sync at 67%, Dr. Ross called out, monitoring their vital signs. He pressed an auto-injector against Craig's neck, administering a stabilizing compound. It's barely holding. The master control unit's crystalline structure pulsed with increasing intensity. Through their shared neural link, images flooded Craig's mind, vast networks of dormant facilities spanning dozens of worlds, waiting for activation signals. The grid, Craig gasped, his eyes rolling back. It's not just containment, it's a beacon. Captain Zara's voice strained with effort. I see it too. The facility is building a transmission array. If it activates, a thunderous explosion rocked the chamber as Kane's forces breached the outer doors. The sound of pulse rifles echoed through the corridors, but the weapon's fire ceased abruptly. Scout worms surged through the breach points, their segmented bodies forming an impenetrable barrier between Kane's team and the master control unit. Craig's controlling them, Marcus observed, his attention split between the neural interface readings and the facility's defense screens. Movement caught his eye, ancient defense platforms descending from concealed bays in the chamber's ceiling. Precursor combat drones, Dr. Ross shouted, the facility's final defense protocol. The drones activated with a distinctive whine, their weapon systems targeting every non-precursor life sign. Red targeting beams swept the chamber as the machines acquired their marks. Through the neural link, Craig witnessed Kane's team being systematically eliminated by precise energy blasts. Marcus's hands moved across the command node's controls, inputting the first override sequence. Craig screamed as neural feedback surged through the connection. Captain Zara's nose began bleeding, but she maintained her grip on the interface panel. Grid construction halted at 85%, Marcus announced, initiating worm network shutdown. The second override sequence triggered another wave of feedback. Craig's body went rigid, his vital signs spiking dangerously on Dr. Ross's scanner. Captain Zara's skin took on a gray pallor as her denobulan physiology struggled to process the neural strain. Commander Dax's voice cut through their comms. Captain, the denobulan fleet is in position. We've identified critical structural points. Give us targeting data and we'll disable the facility's power distribution network. Through their neural connection, Craig and Captain Zara accessed deeper layers of precursor code. Ancient memory banks revealed themselves, presenting an emergency shutdown protocol buried beneath layers of security. The shutdown sequence, Captain Zara managed through gritted teeth. It requires a direct neural conduit for the grid's energy. Marcus analyzed the readout, his expression grim. The feedback would be lethal. We need another solution. Combat drones converged on their position, forcing Marcus to abandon the command node. He dove behind a fallen support beam as energy blasts superheated the air around them. Dr. Ross dragged his medical equipment behind a damaged console, continuing to monitor Craig's deteriorating vital signs. Haven Prime's foundations shuddered. Security Chief Tor's voice crackled through their comms. Magma chambers reaching critical pressure. Primary support structures failing. The master control unit's organic tendrils writhed with increasing agitation. Through the neural link, Craig sensed the transmission array powering up, preparing to broadcast its activation signal across the galaxy. Third override sequence, Marcus called out, returning to the command node, targeting the transmission systems. As Marcus input the final sequence, the combat drones intensified their assault. Energy beams sliced through their defensive positions, forcing them to constantly relocate. The scout worms engaged the drones, but their primitive programming proved no match for the advanced combat machines. Craig's consciousness expanded through the precursor systems, touching ancient protocols and failsafes. Captain Zara's denobulan neural patterns provided crucial stability, preventing his mind from being overwhelmed by the vast data stream. Together, they identified the facility's core commands, but accessing them would require channeling the containment grid's full power through their neural link. The chamber's structure groaned as Haven Prime's tectonic plates shifted beneath them. Time was running out. They had to choose risk a potentially fatal shutdown attempt, or watch as the precursor facility triggered a catastrophic chain reaction across human space. Captain Zara's fingers tightened on the interface panel. Craig, on my mark. The combat drones breached their inner defensive line. Marcus grabbed for the command node as energy beams sliced through the air around them. The choice between sacrifice and survival loomed before them, growing more urgent with each passing second. Marcus's hands flew across the command node's interface, his eyes darting between readouts. Wait, I can modify Unit 147's remaining circuits, create a three-way neural connection. He yanked open an access panel, rewiring components with practiced efficiency. The modified interface hummed to life, additional connection points emerging from the housing. I can share the neural load, Marcus explained, positioning himself at the third panel, but we'll need perfect stillness during shutdown. Craig nodded, blood still trickling from his nose. Captain Zara maintained her grip despite visible tremors running through her frame. The first override sequence initiated. Marcus gasped as alien data flooded his consciousness, joining the shared neural space. The containment grid's construction froze at 92%, massive tendrils hanging motionless in the air. Through their connection, they witnessed several mecha worms collide in the outer tunnels, their destruction echoing through the facility. Doctor. Ross checked his scanner, face grim, neural hemorrhaging increasing, captains showing severe muscular disruption. A combat drone burst through the chamber entrance. Dr. Ross dove for a fallen CMC pulse rifle, rolling behind a power conduit. Energy beams sliced through the air where he'd stood moments before. He fired at the nearest power coupling, creating a shower of sparks. The drone's targeting beam wavered, its shots going wide. The electromagnetic interference, Dr. Ross shouted. It's confusing their systems. He moved methodically through the chamber, overloading power junctions to create safe zones as more drones entered. Marcus initiated the second override sequence, his consciousness merging deeper with Craig and Captain Zara's shared neural space. The mecha worms throughout the facility froze mid-motion. Captain Zara's left arm went limp, sliding from the interface panel. Marcus caught her wrist, pressing her hand back in place. Neural patterns shifting, Dr. Ross reported between shots. Craig's consciousness. It's integrating precursor code. Through their connection, Marcus felt the change. Craig's thoughts took on alien patterns, fragments of ancient knowledge bleeding into his awareness. Captain Zara's presence anchored them, her denobulan neural architecture providing crucial stability. Security Chief Tor's voice crackled through their comms. Central chamber failing. 20 minutes until total collapse. Magma pressure critical. Above the facility, denobulan warships projected massive energy fields, containing the worst of Haven Prime's geological instability. The chamber shook as another support beam gave way. Marcus initiated the final override sequence. Error messages flashed across the interface. The master control unit rejected Craig's hybrid neural pattern, no longer recognizing him as either human or precursor. "Stop," Kane's voice rang out. He emerged from a side entrance supporting a wounded teammate. "The juvenile protection protocols, use them." He staggered forward, hands raised. "Our research showed it. Precursor systems prioritize protecting their young. The boy's hybrid consciousness, it might register as an endangered child." Marcus's fingers danced across the interface, modifying the neural connection one final time. He created a feedback loop, amplifying Craig's neural signature. Energy arced between the interface panels as the containment grid's power flowed through their linked minds. The combat drones ceased firing. They moved in perfect synchronization, forming a protective ring around the neural interface participants. Through their shared connection, images flooded their awareness, vast terraforming arrays, sanctuary worlds being prepared for multiple species. Captain Zara convulsed, blood now streaming from her eyes. Craig's skin had taken on a gray pallor, his neural patterns becoming increasingly inhuman. Marcus felt his own consciousness fragmenting under the strain. Haven Prime's structure groaned. Security Chief Tor's voice was barely audible through the static. Multiple breaches detected. Inner chambers failing. The master control unit's crystal structure pulsed with intense light. Through their degrading neural connection, Marcus sensed the ancient machine's protocols activating. The emergency shutdown sequence awaited their final command, but executing it might destroy what remained of their minds. Energy cascaded through the chamber as the containment grid's power reached critical levels. The combat drone's defensive formation tightened, their weapons tracking unseen threats through the growing chaos. In the shared neural space, fragments of precursor memories continued to surface, revealing deeper truths about the facility's original purpose. Marcus prepared to input the shutdown command, knowing the next moments would determine not only their survival, but the fate of Haven Prime itself. Marcus's fingers trembled over the interface as he input the final command sequence. Energy coursed through the neural connection, illuminating the chamber with crackling blue-white arcs that danced between control panels. "Doctor." Ross sprinted forward, auto-injector ready. Neural collapse imminent. He pressed the injector against Craig's neck, then Zara's, finally reaching Marcus. The stabilizing compound burned through their bloodstreams, providing precious seconds of clarity. Craig's eyes snapped open, pupils dilated to pinpoints. His consciousness, now a hybrid tapestry of human thought patterns interwoven with precursor code fragments, achieved perfect resonance with the master control unit. The crystalline structure pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. "I understand now," Craig whispered, his voice carrying undertones of harmonic frequencies. "The facility. It thinks I'm one of them, a child." The combat drones froze mid-motion, their targeting beams powering down. Throughout the chamber, emergency lights shifted from red to a soft amber. Ancient subroutines activated deep within the facility's core, recognizing what its sensors interpreted as a juvenile precursor in critical danger. Security Chief Tor's voice cut through. "Multiple structural failures. eastern quadrant collapsing. The mecha worms throughout Haven Prime began powering down, their segmented bodies relaxing as hibernation protocols engaged. Marcus watched the facility's status displays as system after system entered emergency shutdown. The containment grid's energy dissipated harmlessly into Haven Prime's atmosphere, the transmission array going dark. Captain Zara convulsed against the interface panel, blood streaming from her eyes. The neural load, too much, breaking connection. Marcus initiated emergency disconnect procedures. Craig's body went limp, slumping forward as consciousness fled. Dr. Ross caught him, lowering him gently to the deck. The boy's skin remained ashen, but his breathing steadied. The chamber shuddered as another support beam gave way. Kane stumbled forward, helping his wounded teammate to safety. The teleport inhibitor field is down. We need immediate evacuation. Captain Zara attempted to stand, but her left side refused to respond. Dr. Ross scanned her with his medical tricorder, expression grim. Partial neural pathway collapse. We need to get her to a medical facility. Emergency transport beams cut through the chamber's chaos, evacuating personnel in precisely timed groups. Above the facility, denobulan warships projected massive energy fields, containing Haven Prime's geological instability. Lieutenant Commander Trill's voice echoed through their comms. Energy dampening fields at maximum. Magma chamber pressure decreasing. Craig stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Though unconscious for only moments, the change in him was evident. His gaze held fragments of ancient knowledge, his neural patterns permanently altered but still fundamentally human. He reached for his father's hand. The worms, they're sleeping now, all of them. Marcus helped Dr. Ross lift Captain Zara, supporting her partially paralyzed left side. The medical team materialized around them, deploying emergency stasis fields. Through the chamber's viewing ports, they watched the massive forms of deactivated mecha worms dotting Haven Prime's landscape, their metallic bodies reflecting the colony's emergency lights. Kane stepped forward, hands raised. All CMC research data is yours. Everything we learned about the facility, the neural interfaces, it's time the truth came out. The master control unit's crystal structure dimmed to a soft glow, transitioning to minimal power mode. Combat drones marched in perfect formation back to their storage bays, weapons systems powering down. The facility's ancient halls grew quiet, centuries of accumulated energy dispersing harmlessly into Haven Prime's bedrock. As emergency transport beams enveloped them, Craig placed his hand against the master control unit's surface one final time. Through his altered neural architecture, he sensed not just the facility's vast knowledge, but its original purpose, a legacy of creation rather than destruction, waiting to be understood. The chamber dissolved around them as transport beams carried them to safety, leaving the precursor facility to its ancient slumber. In orbit, Commander Dax's fleet maintained their protective formation, energy fields stabilizing Haven Prime's wounded surface one sector at a time.